you're an expat in Germany, you're probably going to want to know all of your options, especially in regards to health insurance, if you are looking at paying into public health insurance or private health insurance. And contrary to what many of you may believe or what people might tell you, public insurance might not always be the cheapest option. It also might not always be the best option for you. And since most of you will likely be looking into Ottonova because they are one of the best English-speaking private health insurance companies here in Germany, we are not only going to dive into everything you need to know around private health insurance here in Germany regarding costs and coverage, how they handle any pre-existing conditions, if it's the right move for you, and exactly how you switch. But we are bringing in an insurance expert, Oleksandra from Ottonova, to help answer all of the questions that you have been asking me over on our Instagram channel. Feel free to ask me whatever questions you have whenever you would like. I'm always there. And I really hope that this video will help you understand private insurance here in Germany and if it's actually worth it for you to switch.
All right, thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm Oleksandra. I'm an insurance consultant at Ottonova Private Health Insurance in Germany. And yeah, very excited today to talk to you and kind of clarify private insurance, make it less of a scary topic and more approachable.
Welcome to the call and thank you for being here. I want to dive into the most important topic first, and that is eligibility. Who is eligible for private health insurance? And more specifically, I want to dive into that stigma that it's only for high earners that make enough money above a certain threshold, because that's not always true, is it?
Yeah, if we're talking about eligibility for private health insurance, it depends on the status. Students, yeah, they have their own rules. They can choose private insurance either at the beginning of the studies in the first 3 months, or students over 30 always also go to private insurance. They're not obliged to be in public in the first place. So there are special rules for students. For self-employed people or freelancers, there's also no obligation to be in public insurance. They can switch to private, but every private insurer has internal income requirements, which the person needs to fit. However, for freelancers or self-employed, they are much lower usually than the income threshold for employees. Ottonova's requirement for freelancers is very achievable. For employees, yes, yeah, there is the income threshold. You need to be over it. It changes from time to time. There are more groups of people who can switch to private insurance for sure.
The next question we're going to dive into right away, of course, is the costs of jumping into private insurance. Private insurance is not necessarily expensive. It's actually very much the opposite, and I'd love for you to give your expert opinion on the matter.
For sure. So private insurance is very individually based. The difference here in terms of cost is that in the public insurance, it's calculated based on your income. But in the private insurance, the cost, the monthly premium, depends on your age and health history at the moment of switching into the private insurance. Further down the line, age and health have no more effect on the premium development. It stays stable. But age and health is what the premiums are based on when you're joining. So for young and healthy people who already earn a lot and they pay the maximum income-based premium in public, private insurance is very often both less in cost and covering more in terms of services, right? The individuality aspect is also in the health history, right? Because someone can be young but still have some conditions. There are also insurance instruments themselves that control the cost because it depends on what tariff you go for. So there are things you can do. It's very individual, and generally the younger and healthier you are, the less private insurance will cost you.
I get a question a lot actually from expats who are coming with no intention of actually staying in Germany. I do personally believe if you're young, if you're coming for work, you're already making a good wage anyway, then it might be a better option to go into the private health insurance because you can actually end up saving a lot more money there. Do you have anything to add to this point?
When this is a professional who's coming to work in the country for a limited time, especially if you're coming on a temporary residence permit, if you're a non-EU expat. In the insurance, actually, there is a rule that normally there is a component that holds the premium stable over entire person's life. For people on a temporary permit, this component is optional for up to 5 years. So if you're coming only for 2 or 3 or 4 years, or you're not sure, but there's a high chance that the project is temporary, it might make a lot of sense to go for a tariff like Ottonova's expat tariff, a tariff which is without those aging reserves that keep your premium stable, because they're optional and only for people on a temporary permit. and only for a
Oh.
limited time. And so actually it's a very good idea for an expat to have a suitable private insurance tariff.
I had no idea. That's really interesting. Like you said, the costs will remain relatively stable. Obviously, the younger you join, the more beneficial it will be in the long run for you. But I've always heard that with private insurance that it will increase with age. Is that something that people should really worry about when they're signing up for private insurance?
No. So premiums, they do develop through time, but any kind of individual changes, like the person getting sicker or developing a horrible and very expensive to treat illness or having an accident, right? The health worsening, the age getting higher, that does not have any effect on the private insurance premium.
Okay.
It's regulated by law that we have to not increase the premiums no matter how sick an older person can get, right? And what we have to do is build in the monthly premium the aging reserves, which we will retain. Yeah, every month that you pay us, we will retain a part of what you pay. Quite a big chunk, right? Ottonova retains really high aging reserves, and we use this to finance out the growing health needs later on.
Very interesting. Thank you. We'll stick to the conversation of costs now. Of course, with public health insurance, for example, it's that one monthly cost depending on how much you're earning. And then there's a couple add-ons that you can have, like travel insurance or, better care. What is it like in the private system? Like, what additional costs would there be or could there be?
Private insurance in general covers a lot more than the public one does. So we are regulated to cover everything that public insurance covers, as in hospitalization, visits to doctors, dental care, travel coverage, all of it. But because we don't have to cover the entire population, private insurances don't limit the coverage that much. So whatever you get is usually of a higher quality or more. That's why in the public insurance, you get some coverage. And if you want better care, you get these top-up insurances, like you mentioned, for travel, for dental, stay in a hospital, etc. You would need a lot of top-ups to reach the level of the comprehensive private insurance. There are no top-ups to private insurance. You can choose a different tariff, but in general, the top-up insurances don't exist as a concept like that because they're made for public care because they had to limit public care over time. If we are talking about deductible in a tariff where you say, okay, I want to get reimbursed for claims, but maybe I want to have a part of a claim as an out-of-pocket cost or some number of claims, and because I do this, then I want a lower monthly premium. And private insurances have this, but usually you just get everything covered on a quite high level. There are not a lot of out-of-pocket costs in private insurance, if at all.
So we understand, if you're a young, healthy individual, that private insurance is a really good option to consider when you're first getting started. But what does it look like when you have pre-existing conditions? Would it be covered? Would it be an additional cost?
There's a lot of talk about health with the private insurance because that's what is happening in the beginning, the health assessment. The reason why it's happening is also to understand the situation of a person and if they have pre-existing conditions to account for them. It doesn't mean that you'll be rejected from a private insurance if you have some health conditions. Yeah, it's all evaluated because some things are very severe. Some things are only severe when they're in combination with one another. That's why we have a risk assessment team. You get to describe your situation, upload any documents and whatever. You give all your info and they analyze it. Rejections are rare. Mostly what happens is that maybe a person has a light condition. We know that they will need some treatments for this, maybe in the future. And there is much more common to assign a risk surcharge. A private insurance will say, okay, your initial offer was X and the final offer is X plus XYZ% because of a small condition, so that we can finance the treatment for it later, right? It's also not because we want to assign it, it's because we will help you to get to appointments and get the medicines and get the great care for it. Of course, it can be that some things are not insurable in combination, right? That is unfortunate then, but these factors can improve in the future. And the risk assessment between private insurances can be different. Like somewhere you can get a surcharge and somewhere you can get rejection. So it's very fluid. It's a very individual based on time, right?
Yeah.
And people should not be too scared of the health assessment. It really just gives you an option or informs you about what else you can do.
And for all of our families out there who are looking to get privately insured, what would it be like for private health insurance?
You can also include your family members in the private health insurance. It's not called family insurance. A lot of the time, Familienversicherung is just a concept in public. First of all, who you can include. Yeah, not the whole family, but your children. Or a spouse or legal partner can be a dependent. If it's a spouse or legal partner, then they have to have no or little income of their own. Under the mini job level, under 538 euros, they're considered a dependent. If they earn over that, then they need their own insurance.
Very similar to the public scheme in that sense then.
Exactly right. But in the public insurance, there is no extra cost for a spouse or a child, right? And you just pay your income-based premium, and it's the same whether you're alone or you have a spouse included, it's the same. In the private insurance, the age and health are relevant, and every person is relevant for the calculation of the cost. So what you get is usually several lower age and health-based premiums together, right? And you are the premium payer for yourself and your family. If you're an employee, you receive employer's contribution also for dependents. In private insurance, the point is that if you have a dependent, like a spouse, and they start working, but in private insurance, they leave your insurance. You don't have to pay for them anymore. And in public, you would actually have to start paying for them. So with family, we also say it's very also individual setup for which situation, which insurance system is better. Some people plan for a family where there will be only one earner and maybe several children. And then the benefit of not having a premium in public insurance, even despite limited coverage, outweighs it, right?
Yeah.
And some people plan for double income with kids or without kids, and then already the private insurance is a lot more beneficial.
What if one of them is private because, say, they work for the government, they're beamtet, and the other one is publicly insured? With regards to insuring your family members, the family would have to, the children per se would have to be then added to the private insurance plan, correct?
In most cases, so it makes sense, and most people do it this way. Theoretically, kids can be insured with either parent or their representative, even if both are in different insurance systems, right?
Oh.
It's just that the public insurance sometimes assigns a premium for the kids if out of a couple, the higher earner is privately insured and the lower earner is in public with the kids. The public can start charging for the kids. And they start charging a premium, which is usually higher than a kid's premium in private. For Ottonova, definitely the case. And so our applicants very often decide to take the kids to us because they receive employer's contribution on the kids' premiums. The kids' premiums are low to begin with. And coverage, of course, is the core of this decision because the kid gets better access to doctor's coverage and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I had absolutely no idea. That's really interesting. I always thought it was an automated system, you know, where if there's one on private, then the kids are automatically in private. I had no idea that, I mean, the option's there, it's just you really don't want that option. So now that we understand the costs of what's associated, any add-ons that we need to be thinking of, let's look more into making the actual switch. That's something I've never done myself. So I would love if you could kind of give us like a walkthrough of what one could expect and how we should do it.
The best approach would be to schedule a consultation and talk about your case. It might be a little bit different, you know, in some situations of change, like from an employee to a freelancer, from a dependent to earning and something like this. But generally, there are always two processes that have to happen. One is that you need to notify and cancel the public insurance that you already have. And then you also need to get an offer and evaluate it and sign up for a private health insurance. And these two things are happening in parallel. With the public cancellation, it's very easy. There are two steps. You notify them that you want to cancel, then they give you a certain cancellation period. Usually it's 2 full months. And then they ask you to send them proof of new insurance by the end of these 2 months. Yeah, if you do it, then the switch happens. If you don't send proof of new insurance, nothing happens because it's the cancellation is ignored. It only works if you actually get something else. Right. And then, so when you send the notice, then you get all this time to look around. You're researching private insurance. And then once you get to Nova's final offer, you download your proof of new insurance and you also send it to the public provider, and then everything is complete. We support with it. We even help you with a template for the notice. We can outline and write out for you what is your cancellation time, when you need to send proof, and of course remind you to send it when you get there. The reason I say ask about your case is because sometimes you don't have to wait for 2 months, right? Sometimes you have a status change or something. So maybe just ask us and we'll help.
I think that's the most important thing for internationals too. People just don't know what to expect, and sometimes it's just the fear of making that switch, you know, if I'm just going to be left out in the cold. I mean, I know in Germany you're actually not allowed by law to not be insured through health insurance systems, but still it's like part of me is like, oh my god, what if I cancel my one current contract and I want to switch? What's going to happen if I like lose the status there and then I don't get accepted in Ottonova? And so it's nice to know that that's not actually possible. Like they won't actually cancel your contract unless you prove.
That is a very good point. Very often people call and they have this concern. And what you just said is very relevant. A German health insurance will not let you go until you still show them proof of new insurance, exactly because of this law. And the second part is you shouldn't be worried also too much if it somehow happened that you are without insurance, because people come on maybe a travel insurance and those tend to end, or they forget or somehow. And then Ottonova often can backdate, or we always try to close this gap. So when we're making a final offer, if you haven't had insurance correctly for however much time, we will deal with this. And it's another good thing about having a regulated insurance, right? Because we will check about you being consistently insured and everything.
No matter what the process, whether it's, moving out of your city and moving into a new city or changing phone plans, like it's always about this Abmeldung, Anmeldung, right? Deregistering, registering. I think it's always good to always check with your old provider of whatever it is and then check with your new provider of whatever it is. But health insurance seems to be a relatively easy conversation when going from public to private. What is it like if you wanted to switch back from private to public at some point? Maybe if I fell below the threshold of money that I was supposed to be making, like what happens?
This is a very interesting question. It comes up very often. I don't know why, but people say, I heard that it's impossible to come back into public. That isn't factually true, but it is important to understand why you switch insurance systems in the first place. There are some situations where people can only have public health insurance. Yeah. It's called an obligation, in German Pflicht. And when you are insured pflichtversichert, then that means you are obliged to be in public insurance. People switch to private insurance when they're not obliged anymore. Yeah, only free-willing members of public insurance can switch to private, what we talked about in the beginning. So when they do, these people are in private insurance and they're not obliged to be in public insurance. So they can't go back just in the same situation. But they can if they become obliged again, like sliding under the threshold, becoming an employee under the threshold, or being on unemployment benefits. Arbeitslosengeld also has the obligation to be in public. That's how you switch from private to public. These two obligations, for employees under the threshold and for people on unemployment benefits, they exist and they're kind of separate from each other, because when the threshold rises, people who are right over it, they tend to slide down, not because their life changed, but because the threshold changed.
Yeah, true.
And this is a good example of a situation where it's not really the person's fault or effect from them. And what they can do is withdraw. And they can say, when the public insurance reaches out, which they do, and they write, hey, now you need to come back, people can say, no, I want to withdraw from this obligation and I want to keep my private insurance. That one you can block. And as an employee under the threshold, you always stay in the private system then. Okay. However, if you ever go on unemployment benefits, that scenario will still make you go into the public.
I was always worried, like you said, what if the threshold changes and then I go below, but I don't want to leave my private insurance. I never knew if there was even an option to stay if I could, if I would rather just, pay that additional cost even though I'm making less, because I guess as the threshold increases, probably the costs, the premiums might increase as well due to inflation, right?
Very often they tend to increase together, the threshold for private insurance and the threshold from when people pay the maximum in public.
Yeah.
Maybe we can go into a little bit more detail about this. We've discussed premiums and whether or not they increase with age. I really liked your explanation of, you save a chunk of the payments that you would make monthly in order to go towards your retirement or your aging. Is there anything else that people need to know about increasing ages?
If you want to even counteract the increases and bring it more down in retirement, you can plan a decrease. It's called a premium relief component. You see, those aging reserves, they just work in a way that someone who joined and pays us 400 euros because they joined very young pays us around the same, even if they live to be 100. The premium relief component says that whatever cost this person has when they are 64, we will drop it by a certain amount of money per month. So this is even further like a planned reduction. And this Beitragsentlastungskomponent, premium relief component, it makes a lot of sense in private insurance if people plan to retire here and live here in their retirement. Because, okay, maybe the costs for insurance will stay roughly similar to what it was, but your income is likely to be lower, because pensions will not be that high for our generation potentially. And if you want to also lower your cost in retirement for health insurance, you plan in this reduction of 200, 300, 400 euros, whatever. It's also a comforting thought to know that like employees have help from the employer, people in retirement have a Zuschuss or a help from the pension insurance to pay for the health insurance. It's not 50%, but it is like a contribution that you also get. And that's why if you have the relief component, private insurance costs you very, very little in retirement.
Yeah, I think it's just really all about, sitting down and understanding the numbers too. And I really like being able to, be this transparent. It's really difficult, or it can be difficult sometimes in the health insurance sector, even in public insurance, to understand, how much am I going to pay, because it always depends, right? So once you can sit down and you can get those numbers figured out for your situation, for your life, I think it really helps, because it took me a long time to actually get to that point and realize, okay, I really need to do this for myself as I'm aging. How much am I paying in my insurances? Not just health insurance, but insurances in general. Should I look into, private pensions and saving up additional money? All of these components really link well up, and it's been great because I've also had Ask the Expert calls as well with some other insurance brokers who are in, the retirement space and maybe liability insurance and all of the other types of insurances that you need to consider. But I'm really, really happy that we have you on the call today to really stand behind Ottonova, because I know myself why I choose to work with Ottonova as a partner and to promote them. For me, it's a simple solution, really. For all English speakers who come here, I typically say, consider that first. Consider if you are eligible to be a part of a private insurance. If so, Ottonova is one that you can manage on your own. You know what I mean? You really don't need help in so many other facets of living here in Germany. You need help. You need someone who speaks German. You need someone to come with you and do this and do that. And health insurance is one of those things with Ottonova that you just really don't have to worry about. And this is why I personally love you guys so much. But I would love to hear from you. What benefits do you see that Ottonova has for expats and students moving here to Germany?
I'm also a foreigner in Germany, and I also did not get any introduction into the health insurance. Thinking back, it was because it was all in German. Even the things that were in English ended up not being really correct. Having a company that we can contact easily, non-binding, and in a quick way, just talk about your situation and clarify it with a person and not form online or whatever, that would have helped me. Ottonova is a fully regulated German private health insurance, and that means that all of our tariffs would work for getting and prolonging a residence permit, getting a working student position or a working position. It's including nursing care, which is mandatory. So we're a comprehensive German insurance, fulfilling all the legal requirements. And of course, we offer great coverage at very balanced rates, and we make the experience very easy for you. In contrast to all the other insurances, Ottonova is fully digital. It's all in one app. The reimbursement is just taking pictures and uploading them. There is a chat and call function. You can always contact us and we answer in English, and we help you with appointments and any other requests. And you keep all your documents there too. You get reminders to not forget to go to preventative checkups, for example. So it's very easy to use, and it's also in English. I think it's a very good choice for expats and for foreign students too.
Well, thank you so much for answering all of these questions that I had. It's been a pleasure having you on the call, honestly. And also, if anybody has any additional questions, I feel like I've summed up a lot of the questions that most of you guys asked me so that we could answer them on this call. But if there are more questions, either regarding Ottonova specifically or private health insurance, then definitely leave your comments in the section below, and I will leave all of the links that you need to go check out Ottonova yourself so that you can really figure out if that works for you. Thank you so much for being on the call with us and for sharing all of your expert advice and opinions with us.
Thank you for having me, Jenna. It was very nice. And yeah, I hope that we talk again.